During their ongoing mission, the brave Starbarians have stopped over on planet Galeron 5 to rescue the kidnapped princess from the evil snake wizard Syad, who can bend the very fates to his own evil will.
Where to next, Kilgar?
Why don't we let fate decide?
Now what?
Welcome to Glowburn, a podcast dedicated to the Mutant Crawl Classics role-playing game.
This is a test. This is only a test.
Welcome to Glowburn, a podcast about Mutant Crawl Classics role-playing game and old-school post-apocalyptic adventuring. I'm Judge Mark.
I'm Judge James.
And I'm Judge Reid.
And on tonight's episode, we'll be talking about hex crawls with our expert guest, Judge Reid San Filippo. And guys, I think I see a storm coming, so let's head down to the shelter.
Sounds like a good idea.
Down in the shelter.
And welcome to Down in the Shelter, where we highlight our MCC and DCC gaming and playing and writing and reviewing and shopping and other stuff. All of the things, okay? Just all of the things.
Everything.
And we're going to kick it off by kicking it over to our guest. Reid, tell us about what you've got going on lately in gaming.
Well, on the DCC MCC front, I haven't actually been running or playing anything because I've been too busy trying to finish up the American Kickstarter that just finished up. So that took up a lot of my time. And at the moment, I am working on co-authoring, art wrangling, and project managing the America Road Atlas and the America Unnatural books to some form of acceptable completion.
So what you're saying is you're not very busy at all.
No, not busy. But in the meantime, I am blowing off all of those responsibilities and completely shaming myself for the backers' money by running a sort of weekly Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd Edition game.
Seems legit.
Yeah. And I also have been doing a bi-weekly 5th Edition game that I've been playing that, it's okay.
You know what? I think that's the best example I've heard of 5th edition. I talk to folks, they're like, yeah, it's okay.
I still haven't tried it. No real impetus to do so.
You don't have to. I tried it for you.
Well, thank you, sir.
I feel like somewhere in the cosmos there is some kind of long conversation that we may have had with Reid about the America Road Atlas and America Unnatural books.
I mean, it does seem like something that we would have done.
For about 90 minutes of time somewhere in space and time.
I'm sorry, Senator. I have no recollections of those events.
Yeah, I want to say we did it for the 24th episode, but this is the 24th episode.
Yeah, this is the episode 20. It couldn't have been this.
Clearly, it couldn't have been the 24th episode.
Well, I mean, it depends. How many times have you seen the Groundhog so far?
I don't know. I just know to not drive angry.
Exactly.
Well, congratulations on the Kickstarter. I know you passed at least one stretch goal. I don't remember exactly how many.
We just managed to make one stretch goal in the last 5 minutes.
Oh, so a photo finish.
Yes.
Well, that just means that you have a lot of stretch goals to use next time.
Maybe.
I guess. I don't know how Kickstarters work.
Do you do enough of them?
I back them. I don't do them. There's a big difference between running a Kickstarter and like just throwing money at somebody.
Really? Maybe that's my problem this whole time.
Oh my gosh.
Well, Jim, what about you? I see a lot of notes in the show notes.
I put notes in. I try to do that sometimes. Anyway. All right. I got a pair of DCC games going strong still. Friday, we are still going along on me and Judge Evie's campaign. It's like, I don't want to say it's weekly, but it's not bi-weekly. It's kind of like quasi-weekly because it's usually weekly unless something comes up. So I guess this is still a weekly game, but this is with all the 13-year-olds and their crazy psychopaths and stuff, and that's going well. Actually, so last game, we went from Queen of Elfland's Son, and I wanted to run the One Who Watches from Below, and I made the mistake of letting their characters tie up loose ends in town, and that got so bad, I had to conclude the adventure with an "It's all a dream, and you all wake up." That's how bad it went. They were like kidnapping parents and trying to purchase children, and like it was just crazy. It was awful, and murdering people and all kinds of stuff. So off the rails, such a hot mess. It became all a dream, and that's just how we're gonna let that go.
So are you saying that Evie is actually just a typical teenage girl?
Evie was actually the more responsible one of the group.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Imagine a world where Judge Evie is sane, and that was the world I was in.
Wow.
I know she didn't want her character to die. Her Hero Forge version of Betty Bunker, the corrupted wizard, arrived this week, and I have to paint that now. So I didn't want to kill her character. It cost me $20 in miniatures. So
yeah, you got to get at least a few sessions out of that character.
At least one.
A few sessions. I'll say printing Hero Forge miniatures for DCC characters is probably the riskiest thing you can ever do in life.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that takes some cojones right there.
It does. Our DCC Lankmore game is going to continue this week, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm going to miss it, unfortunately.
You're not going to be there for the end of this adventure?
I'm sorry, but you scheduled it on a day where I already had a game scheduled.
Well, all I got to say is, like, the other day, you all were like, well, that's Memorial Day and stuff.
Well, it is Memorial, or it was going to be Memorial Day weekend, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to make that.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's still going to be Memorial Day weekend. It was going to be. It is going to be.
Okay,
it's Memorial Day.
Semantics, but still.
Well, while you're doing that, we'll be finishing up Mass of Lankmar. My amazing wife bought me some Dwarven Forge for my 40th birthday, which is Monday, and I am very excited to use that at a gaming table, so that's going to probably pop up maybe this weekend. So the Kickstarter stuff for that got delayed, and I was kind of bummed out not to have it this summer. So she bought me 3 rooms, and she is such an amazing wife. And because she had asked what I wanted for my birthday, and I said what I wanted was for Stefan Picorni, like the designer from around Dwarven Forge, to show up at our house to run a game. And damn it, if she didn't try to go as far as she could with that. She reached out to all of like my friends who might know gaming people to see who might know them, just so she can get me in a game at like Gen Con or something.
Yeah.
But even cooler was that she got me a card signed by the entire Dwarven Forge design team for my birthday.
Wow.
I know. It was really cool.
That's pretty cool.
It was real, and they were really cool about it. They had Momo, I guess is the one dog over there. They had the Momo's footprint on it. They gave me a piece of Dwarven Forge that was chewed up by the dog, it looks like. And then they gave me didn't give me. Jen bought this part. She bought me like 3 segments that last night Carrie and I spent way too much time just forming and reforming into rooms. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Sweet.
A lot of miniature painting ahead because my Reaper Bones 4 stuff showed up. So I have lots of dinosaurs. I went heavy on dino stuff. So I know there's a Dino-tastic park out there somewhere. And there's also Mark Bruner has a Dino World that he did for one of the annuals.
Annuals?
Not annuals, but you know what I mean. The Gen Con program guides. The annuals, something different.
The Gong Farmer's Almanac?
No, the Gen Con program guide.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah, he's referring to, was it last year's or 2 years ago they did
2 years ago.
Bronchosaurus Rex conversion?
Yeah, maybe it was it.
Yeah. Anyway.
The last thing I want to say, like for viewing stuff, and it's awful in a good way. 'Cause it's like not like It's very well done, but if you are interested in maybe seeing some of the effects of radiation and what that does on a person, and maybe not like a real person, but like a movie version, I watched the first 2 episodes of the Chernobyl miniseries on HBO, and it's messed up. If you don't know much about what happened with Chernobyl back in the 80s, it gives you a good background of just the nightmare scenario that was, how worse it could have been, and then what it did to the people that were, having to engage with the reactor explosion and stuff. So give it a watch if you want to see some inspiration for horrific radiological disaster stuff.
Yeah, I don't have the HBO, but if I ever stumble across that somewhere else, I'll keep an eye for it.
You might be lacking in the HBO, but what kind of gaming have you not been lacking in, Mark?
I have not been lacking in a bunch of stuff. It's been a while since we recorded. I've had 2 sessions of the monthly MCC game with Judge Forrest continues to survive, his Sentinel character, Pierre Tramp. It remains a resilient feature of the campaign. We finished out Warlords of Atos, and I don't know if you guys know that adventure at all.
I don't.
You don't? Okay. I don't want to do spoilers, so I'll just say that at the end of the adventure, the characters ended up in space. Woo! And then the next adventure, they spent the entire time in space on I don't want to call it a derelict space station because that's not accurate. It is inhabited, but it is a semi-broken down space station that was like a orbital defense platform type of thing that the AI Mangala controls. And they interacted with some of his followers on this space station, and he gave them a quest to reopen one of his temples on a different planet, the planet Mars, which, the characters don't understand, but the players do. And so the next session, which is actually next week, so I should probably start doing something for that.
You'll work on that.
Yeah, should probably start working on that. They're going to go and they are going to try and clear out the Temple of Mangala and reactivate the communications link that would let the AI get into the temple. Earlier this week, on Monday actually, I kicked off a Decipher System apocalypse game, not post-apocalypse, but directly in the apocalypse. I pitched the game as an alien invasion. I said, it will be an alien invasion. You guys will see the aliens come down and they will destroy cities and wipe out civilization, and then you guys will have to survive and do whatever you want to do. And so that kicked off, and I basically spent the whole session just building up how powerful these aliens were. They've got a spaceship the size of the moon, and they were cutting up one of the planet's moons to consume. And I think that was when it really kind of sunk in that I wasn't fooling around, because when you describe the alien spacecraft as firing plasma beams to slice the moon into pieces and then consuming that moon into the spaceship, all the players just kind of gave me this blank look on Skype, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It's all fun and games until an alien race eats a moon.
That's right.
Exactly. And then also in science fiction, non-MCC gaming, I have been playing the Expanse RPG. There was a free-to-play, quick start that included an adventure, and the Kickstarter digital rewards have started to fulfill. So we ran the free-to-play from the quick start, and then we followed that up with, and I think it's an adventure in the book or something. So we've played 2 sessions, and the Expanse RPG uses the age system that the Dragon Age RPG created. So you roll in 3 6-sided dice for everything, and if you roll doubles on any of the dice, you get to do a stunt. But it is a significant refinement over the Dragon Age system. Damage is handled very differently, and there's a thing called the churn tracker, which is sort of like GM intrusions from Cypher System, but it incorporates into it a timing mechanism where basically every time a player rolls a 6 on the dragon die, or this system calls it the drama die, the GM is ticking something off on their chart, and every time the players spend a certain amount of stunt points, they're checking something off on the chart.
What do they call it?
The drama die.
I heard dromedary.
Yes, the dromedary. It's not the other kind of camel.
Roll 1d4 llamas.
Yes, exactly. Basically, they've got a little chart there, and they're checking boxes off every time the players do certain things. And when it gets to like these milestone points, the GM is basically told, screw with the players, and it's given some suggestions. So it's kind of an interesting mechanic to inject uncertainty into the campaign, because even the GM doesn't know when that timing is going to play out, and it could play out very quickly or it could play out very slowly. The last session we played in, my dice were really hot, and I was rolling a lot of 6s, and I was spending a lot of stunt points, and the other players and we were very excited because we were being very successful at stuff. And then the GM kind of started laughing, and I went, oh, wait, why are you laughing? And she said, oh, nothing. And she made like a check mark on the churn chart. And I went, oh, no, because I remembered everything. And I looked at them and I went, should we do this, or should we like start playing it cool? And they're like, nah, screw it. So we kind of just continued to barrel forward. But there was always that understanding that, you know, the better we did, the more likely stuff was going to come down the pipe to slap us in the face. So it was pretty interesting. Really different kind of RPG system than, you know, most of the other stuff that I've seen out there. And it's a fun one. I would suggest that people give it a try if they're into the Expanse, or, you know, give Dragon Age a try if you like those games.
Definitely down the sci-fi path here. I'm so like up to my neck in fantasy stuff. So I'm like on the far end of that spectrum right now.
Me too.
Yeah, we'll be starting to rebound from that a little bit. But I mean, with my MCC game being in space and my other game being an alien apocalypse on a colony world, like, I'm not going to be able to escape the sci-fi for a bit, which is fine, you know.
Me and Ree got the fantasy stuff covered then.
Yeah, that's true. Although, Mark, there is one thing. I don't believe you're actually pronouncing that right. I think it goes, in space.
Yeah. It's been a while since I watched The Muppet Show because I don't know where to find it.
Aww.
I think it's on Netflix.
DVDs, man.
Who has DVDs?
I do.
I barely even have Blu-rays. I've gone digital, which is weird.
Speaking of going digital, let's go listen to the voices of the Ancient Ones.
That sounds like a plan, Jim.
In 3D!
Voices of the Ancient Ones.
All right, time to listen to some of these voices of the Ancient Ones. This is where we give all of you, I almost said yins, the amazing Glowburn community the opportunity, and some might say privilege, to contribute to the show. Send us some questions, comments, and other glowing wisdoms. Here's an old postcard I found in the desiccated corpse of an alien that just consumed a moon. Hello, my glowy friends. I am a huge fan of anthropomorphic animal and plant characters in my post-apocalyptic games. Obviously, MCC has manimals and plantians to satisfy this niche in the game. I also know that you have previously discussed other ways to get such characters into your games, such as the rules from Crawling Under a Broken Moon, TMNT, or even Starcrawl. I was wondering what you thought about two other resources to incorporate such beings into MCC games, specifically Bronx Beast by Dan Stevie and Primal Tales written by Brendan LaSalle and Brett Brooks. I'm curious about whether you would mash multiple systems together, or you'd pick one and use that for anthropomorphic characters. Thanks, DM Kojo. That's a great question.
It is a good question.
Well, I would say on my end here is I am not familiar with Bronx Beast. Judge Evie has her hands on Primal Tales. She bought it at Gen Con last year, and I've had a look through it. I think the book is really cool. I hope they do more of those. How I would like kind of mess with that is to have all pure strain human characters gain that primal family chart roll rather than have mutated manimals, or you can have those too, but I mean, replace the pure strain humans, and instead of pure strain humans, have PSH stand for primal strain humanoids. So it works for each. And that way, like if you just say, okay, we're going to have these primals as the pure strain the primal strain characters, and they'll be the sentinels and the healers, the rovers, and the shamans. And then maybe someone is a completely over the top mutated manimal or is a plantient, and maybe the closest thing you have with a human in that world would be a mutant, and that's as closest to mutant as you would get. So you kind of switch manimal and mutant a bit. So if I was going to mash that in, I would do that. I hadn't read through it since I think the fall, and I forgot how many cool things there were in that book. So I definitely can't recommend it enough. How about Reid, your thoughts?
Well, I have taken a look at the Bronx Beasts, but I haven't seen the Primal Tales yet. But in general, I believe any good apocalypse has room for a tremendous amount of diversity, and that there is more than one way to reskin a Catman. Neither DCC or MCC is really concerned about the true balance between different PCs, so I would recommend just let anyone who wanted to play an anthropomorphic animal character pick whichever system they seemed was coolest and hold them to that rule set. So if one person wanted to be a character based off of Bronx Beasts, and another one wanted to be based off of Primal Tales, and another one wanted to be based off of something else, well, all three of them can be in the party, and all three of them obey the rules according to their stuff, which should make things interesting because that means they're all different and they're all going to be, handling things differently.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best games are when you just kind of like back off of the rules a bit and just say, look, do what you want to do, play that character, and we'll see how it goes. And if, as the game progresses, if it's a campaign to tweak a couple things, then no big deal.
Yep.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the kitchen sink approach that you just described.
You're all about that kitchen sink, man.
There's no reason why, because the manimals are sort of like the extra mutated freakazoids. The Bronx Beast characters are, your sort of stable lineages, long, almost like more of like an evolutionary path as opposed to a mutant. And then the Bronx Beast characters are more like, like the TMNT, where they're like a one-off mutation that's,
Oh, I get it now. Okay.
So like each of those three products could create a separate sort of flavor of mutant animal character that are all equally valid. I mean, the Bronx Beast, you're going to get the potential for some significant, variation on humanoid. That's one of the things I liked about Bronx Beast was you could end up with like a bear who doesn't have the ability to walk on two legs and doesn't have human hands and is basically just a bear who's smart. Or you could end up with like, a bear who, is basically just like a person and has like looks entirely human and walks around on 2 feet and has, human hands and, is almost unrecognizable from being a bear. And so the Bronx Beast kind of does that really well. And the primals are more like your Bugs Bunny, if you will. You're like very clearly descended from a certain animal stock, but they are an anthropomorphic, walk on 2 legs, have fully functioning hands, speak like a normal person type of thing.
But the primals do have special abilities based on what primal they are, like what genotype, whatever you want to call it, what they come from.
Absolutely. They have some sort of natural weapon. They might have a special ability of some kind or another. The Bronx Beasts also have the potential to have some of those kind of abilities, whereas the MCC manimals don't. They're more wild card, right? I mean, you're going to get these crazy mutant powers, and they could be pretty amazing, but they may or may not have anything to do with the animal you came from.
You're a dog with gas generation, or you are...
Well, don't all dogs have gas generation?
Most I've seen.
An insect that can warp space and time. I actually like, when I was reading through it again, I think I like because there's a couple of things I think are missing in the pure strain humans sometimes to make them stand out a bit more. I know they get the extra bonuses for, whenever they're doing artifact rolls. And I know they get some extra bonuses when they're doing AI recognition, and maybe there's some tweaking that should happen with those. But I really liked adding that random roll to the primal strain humanoids, if you will. I thought that came up with a really cool kind of, all the, what was it, Life After People? Mm-hmm. That TV show on History Channel or whatever, or Nat Geo, where you saw the world after, all the humans are gone. I think that's a really, hey, it's very Planet of the Apes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
More so than Manimals, because Manimals do have that over-the-top feel that, if you're an orangutan primal, you probably feel more like a Planet of the Apes character than if you're a Manimal primal, because a Manimal from MCC.
Orangutan.
Yeah, because you will very likely have nothing to do with anything that's orangutan-based.
But you'll be able to fire laser beams from your fingers.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
gas clouds from Uranus. So...
the planet?
Also consumed by your aliens, yes, sadly. Sadly.
Okay. So I guess the short answer, Kojo, is we here at Glowburn advocate just throwing everything into the blender and hitting puree.
We approve. It's Glowburn approved. Stamp.
Exactly. All right, let's see here. There was a two-headed pigeon that came by earlier and dropped off this letter, which is extremely long, so I apologize to the author, but we had to truncate this to fit into the time allotted. Dear judges, I want to drop you a line to tell you how wonderful your Glowburn podcast is. It is fantastic.
We kept that part in.
Yes, we definitely we were going to leave this part in. We have egos to stroke, folks. Let's just face it. I've only recently discovered it, and though I have listened to just 3 episodes, I'm liking what I hear very much. Though I have played Dungeons & Dragons for close to 40 years now, I had never played Gamma World until recently, so I don't have any early 80s nostalgia for the game. However, I picked up Mutant Crawl Classics a few days ago and was hugely impressed by it. I think the Terra AD post-apocalyptic setting holds enormous role-playing potential. I was also impressed by the rules' adaptability. With the appropriate changes where needed, I think that with those rules, you could recreate just about any science fantasy novel or television setting you wish. Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom springs to mind, as well as David Drake's The General series. He goes on to detail some thoughts he has on Barsoom and other games, and including the settings. And then he says, Mutant Crawl Classics has inspired me to develop and adapt the rules for settings beyond that of pure post-apocalypse, though I think that Terra AD is excellent as is. I would love to hear you consider methods of adapting the MCC rules set to other forms of science fantasy. Please keep up the great work. Regards, Mark DeSantis. And well, first of all, thank you, Mark. It is always nice to have our egos stroked. I do tend to agree. I've been playing RPGs for a long time, and I play in a published setting for a couple of months, and then I grow tired of the things I don't like about the published setting, and I start doing what you described, which is, taking the rules and making them fit to something that fits my personality more, whether it be a different published setting from a novel or a movie, or just a hodgepodge, made up thing of my own. So I really, really like the flexibility and the sort of do-it-yourself attitude that MCC and DCC encourage. Reid has definitely probably felt that, I'm guessing. I don't know. What do you think, Reid?
I, from a very early age in my role-playing history, loved taking, the games that I owned to try to make different settings come alive with those same game systems. I'm a big fan of adapting existing rule sets to run games, especially ones that were kind of unintended genres for that, but seem to fit when you take a look at really what the mechanics are doing. And for me, the most important thing is to address the defining elements of the new genre or setting that you're trying to adapt to, so that all the players can feel what it makes the new genre or setting unique. Meaning that if you are going to be adapting MCC to do Barsoom, well, what is it about Barsoom that makes Barsoom Barsoom. What makes it interesting? What makes it different than any other sword and sandals style kind of playset for the characters to run around in? And make sure that you're addressing those things first before just filling in all the gaps.
Well said. Jim?
Well, I think if you love Barsoom or like Barsoom or have any interest in Barsoom, you're going to love the Purple Planet. And we'll discuss that a bit on the little bit here on the show. But
Yes.
If you haven't seen that yet, Peril on the Purple Planet, go pick that up. It is a great Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure box set that has a great alien world theme to it, that you could very easily have MCC characters go there if you want to kind of cross-pollinate. As to, running MCC in games that aren't post-apocalyptic, kind of a post-apocalyptic adjacent, in my default MCC campaign that I use for any convention settings or when I run it for just friends at home is based on the Metamorphosis Alpha ship from, Metamorphosis Alpha, the Warden. It's the Warden in Metamorphosis Alpha. I call it the Augustus in my world because Jim Ward, so the Warden. So my middle name is August. So Augustus, that's how I named my version. A little different than the Warden. And that's my stock MCC campaign, and I use that at home when I run games at MCC, and that's a little more sci-fi than and there's a bit more like spacey stuff in there possibly than base MCC. The other genre that I found the rules work well for is, you could do some pretty fun superhero stuff. I mean, we are in the era of Avengers Endgame, right? So you could use the mutations if you wanted to make mutant characters kind of X-Men style. I ran that a year ago. Last May, I was getting ready to move from Pittsburgh to the Philadelphia area, and I ran a Country Crawl Classics game with some friends. That's a zine that was handed out at the last, was it Gen Con or Gary Con last year, that was put together by a bunch of folks, and I used that to make this Country Crawl Classics superheroes session where every PC got a mutation and a defect. Now, I would say if you're doing something heroic, don't give any defects out. We had one character roll up +3 to their agility score as their mutation and -3 to their agility score for their defect, and that kind of ruined their character. But you could do some cool stuff. I was thinking about maybe like if you took, the TV show Heroes. Remember Heroes, guys? You ever see Heroes?
I do, yes.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
There was the great season 1, the decent season 2, and it turned into a train wreck after that, right?
Yeah, the downhill slide.
Yeah, so you could pull off some pretty cool hero stuff. You want to try to run DCC or MCC in a modern setting of every character, and just, instead of for equipment, just get a Sears catalog or something, and then you have every character play as a mutant, as the mutant class, and give them just do that, but in modern world. That'd be a real fun way to use the MCC rules and maybe kind of get your comic book taste buds satisfied, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, sounds cool.
And I definitely agree that the Purple Planet, I mean, it's a DCC box set, but in all honesty, it would require basically no effort to make an MCC version of it, if that's what you wanted to do.
I could see if you had I was thinking about how when I was reading this question earlier this week, in my games, you have the player characters start as MCC characters on the Warden, and they get ejected off into space, and they crash land on the Purple Planet, and boom, crossover, there you are.
Yep, exactly. I think we've got one more.
We do have one more. I can read it here. So, and here we have an old USB drive containing a simple text document in Comic Sans. Greetings, Glowburners. I am looking to start my first MCC campaign, and I'd like to run it as a hex crawl. As I am also new to hex crawling, I would love to hear your thoughts on how you would run a hex crawl in MCC, and what resources you would recommend for stocking hexes and generating encounters. I would also be interested to hear how you would handle vehicles and the greatly increased range they provide PCs over walking. Journeys that take days on foot through several hexes could be completed in hours hours or less. How would you maintain the sense of freedom for players to move about a map without requiring an insane amount of hexes? And we love the podcast, Ken McLennan.
Yeah, so that's a slightly timely question.
It's an awesome question.
Yep.
Which actually is the inspiration for this episode. We received this and we said, you know what? I bet we could make a whole episode on hex crawls. And here we are.
This is it.
Yeah, so we should probably just go ahead and move right into the Great Disaster, huh, guys?
Let's do it, man.
Oh, yeah.
The Great Disaster.
Welcome to the Great Disaster. This evening we'll be talking about hex crawls. Or maybe hex crawling.
Or grid crawls if you don't have hex paper.
Oh my god, what kind of barbarian are you?
But there's more than 6 directions to go. I don't know where I'm going. I'm lost and I'm scared.
Who crawls orthogonally? Come on, man.
It's like those old games from like the 80s where you can only move in like steps from the northeast, south, or west.
I mean, I guess if you were doing like an MCC Zelda port.
What? Zelda? You can go in other directions. I guess you can't. No, you can't.
No.
It was orthogonal.
No.
It's true.
So we should probably explain for those people who may not know what a hex crawl is. So I guess in my mind, a hex crawl is sort of the ultimate of sandbox RPG. You have a GM who's got a map. That map may or may not just be a big old blank sheet of paper with a hex grid on it, or it may be a pre-drawn map with a hex grid on it. That's, a style thing, I think. And then there's a starting point, and the players decide everything after that, and then as they enter into new hexes, the GM will determine if they encounter things via various methodologies, random rolls, or card decks, or God only knows what. That's how I see a hex crawl. You guys have any different thoughts on that?
I think that's, in general, a good layout. I think it's important that with a hex crawl, good hex crawl, and my opinion, obviously, is that there's not only surprises for the players, there are really fun surprises for the GM at the table. They come to the seat not expecting how the night's going to progress. So it's not just something new for the players or something different or crazy or random. GM has little prep to do, but gets to really lean on their improvisational skills.
Well, back in the day...
Back in my day...
Back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth. A lot of the hex crawls that existed in the past, not saying that some of them weren't a bit more on the random side that you'd find nowadays, but most of them, imagine, if you will, a sheet of hex grid paper. Within the bottom section of each of the hexes would be a 3 or a 4-digit number. And that number corresponded to a key in an actual rule book for the location, if you will. So if somebody walked into hex 0802, you would just go ahead and look it up. They'd all be in numerical order. And you go look into that, and the game master would then be able to give a description based off of what was already written down for that hex. Sometimes they would refer you to roll on one of the various random tables based on what the hex already contained, or sometimes the hex was a fully defined hex that was effectively a plot point for some way that the characters could interact with one of the groups of NPCs that existed within the area that was the hex crawl. The idea being the players are the ones that choose which hex they move into. So it's kind of like an adventure where the adventure is all happening all at once, and the players interact with it when they choose to interact into a live node of action by moving into a hex that happens to actually have something going on in it that triggers a random plot point. The more randomized stuff was more of if I remember correctly, it happened a lot later on, where there'd be half the hexes would be fully laid out, and the other hexes would refer you to one or more random charts to roll on because the hex itself was not predefined for you.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. The way that I set up my MCC game, I have a map that I created of the I don't want to call it the known world. It's more like the unknown world. I located the player's home village in the middle of the map, and then I went through and I put features in various locations on the map that are specific MCC modules. So, like, there is a module location for Warlords of Atos. There's another one for Incursion of the Ultra Dimension, and another one for Evil of the Ancients, and so forth and so on. And the rest of the map I did fill in with, scenery. There's some grasslands here, and there's some forest here, and some mountains, and, whatnot. And then when we actually got to the hex crawling part, I basically was removing fog of war as the players were moving into new hexes. And so, they had initially gone south from their village. And after like a couple of hexes, they found a body of water, which it was a pond, but that led to a river. And they said, well, we're going to follow the river. And so we were revealing hexes as they followed along the length of the river.
I was in that game.
Yeah. So, that is sort of like a combination, like a little bit of both of what, what you were talking about, Reid, where I had a map. I didn't have keyed locations because I actually had a map that was, generated with terrain and whatnot. I did have some keyed locations as far as the modules, but all of the other hexes I randomly determined if something was going to happen, and I created my own table for that. So, one of the things that Ken was looking for was how to run a hex crawl in MCC. And specifically, he said, what resources would you recommend for stocking hexes and generating encounters? So I think that's probably the real meat here for most folks, which is, what kind of tools do you use to do a hex crawl? I mentioned that I've got a map, and I actually use... What are you laughing at?
It's like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow the show notes here. And, like, you've gone from, like, a question that wasn't even on the show notes to the last question on the show notes. So I'm, like, trying to keep track of where we're going here.
There is no order to the show notes, Jim. You know
your
this.
order is about as organized as a hex crawl. That's
Exactly.
all I'm saying.
Exactly.
Because the first question was, like, not even one in the show notes. And then you go skip right to the item number 4.
Like I said, man, the show notes were just there to generate thinking. We weren't going to use them as a script.
Hey, now, nobody told me that coming onto the show required thinking.
Oh, sorry about that.
After a long day at work, I need show notes to guide me through like a railroaded adventure for 5th edition D&D.
Sorry, man. This is a hex crawl episode. We're hex crawling.
All right, we're up to that's fine. We're at tools now. We can bounce around. Let's go for tools.
Yeah, all right. So I don't even remember where we were. I'm just going to go ahead and say... So one of the things that was asked by our letter here was resources that we would recommend for stocking hexes and generating encounters. So what tools, Jim, what tools do you want for stocking hexes and generating encounters?
I got tools for everybody here. Mine are the most basic, and then it looks like Yin's guys expand upon this, okay? Mm-hmm. So the first thing is 2 kinds of maps. Player maps and GM maps. I think it's important for the GM to have an idea of what's in every hex or square. Again, for those of us who just use graph paper because we're cheap, to know what's on the map, but then a player map that shows where they've been and what they can see. And depending on the range of each square, like what the scale is, you could reveal to the players maybe 1 hex in every direction, maybe 2 in every direction if they are climbing up to a high point, something like that. And the other thing is a good tool is an openness by the GM to let just about anything happen.
So let me ask a question here. You say talk about two kinds of maps. So you're saying like a predefined map for the GM.
Yes.
And then a player map. Is this player map something that you pre-prepare, or is this just a blank sheet of paper you hand them?
I mean, in the question you were going to ask us first, but you didn't, about what's a notable hex crawl you've experienced, So just so the Glowburn audience knows, like item number 1 and item number 4 are totally...
There's no numbers here. There's no numbers here.
It's an implied numerical system was here, okay?
We've done how many episodes, Jim? You know that I jump around.
You've never jumped from 1 to 4 ever, okay? What I was going to refer to in the beginning, which would have made a lot more sense, is like I'm a firm believer that, and I played some of the old school hex scrolls I've done. You can kind of consider Isle of Dread at least open world. Personally, like Peril on the Purple Planet is the greatest hex crawl that I've played from start to finish. I've read a lot of great ones that are equally awesome, but that's one that I've run as a full campaign, you know, so I can speak of that one from the beginning to the end. And that game comes with, it's by Harley Stroh, it's for DCC. It comes with two maps, the map of the entire plateau you're on as characters, and then one that is just what the players see when they come out of the starting temple. Spoilers, okay? Game of Thrones spoilers. You start in a temple in Purple Planet, all right? So that map there you can give to the player characters, you print it out, and they can draw on the map as they move about the world. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pre-seeded map. You maybe have it identical to your map. You hand one to the players. If it's online, you force them to do it on their own at home or through maybe some system that you might speak of, Mark, that's similar. Like what have you done? Let's shift to you, Mark. What are your... I can see one in my mind that you were going to discuss in a second that's helpful for players.
All right. So, yeah. So, for me, obviously you need a map. You know, that's either the GM needs something. You need to know, even if it's just really, really vague, and you know that to the west there's mountains, to the east there's a large body of water, you know, to the north there's a big scary forest, and to the south there's a desert. Like, even if it's that general and there's not any other detail than that, you need a map. Now, for the MCC game, I use a program called HexKit. It is by Cecil Howe, and I think it's fantastic because it is really intuitive to use. And he's got great art. All of the art is hand painted. I don't know if you were aware of that, Jim. All of those little hexes are hand painted.
I wasn't, no.
Yeah, Cecil has like hand painted, I don't know, probably several hundred, if not close to 1,000 hexes in various styles, you know, for various types of terrain. And then scanned them for the program. And then when you use like the paint tool to do mountains, it'll like randomly fill in each hex as you go with a different one of the 12 or so different mountain tiles that have been hand painted. It's amazing. But it's a really great program, and it's super light. It doesn't require a big, heavy, powerful, you know, computer to chunk through, unless you've got an immense map. I mean, if you're like talking a 50 hex by 50 hex map, or like fully painted with multiple layers, then your computer's going to start needing a lot of RAM to chunk through, but it doesn't have like a huge graphics card requirement. And it's cheap. You can buy the basic set on Drive-Thru RPG, I think for like $10. And then there's 2 or 3 different add-on packs that add various tile sets to expand on the basic sets that are available with the initial purchase. I love it. It's probably the best thing, and it's built to have display function with Fog of War, which was another thing that I really liked. So map is important. I agree with Jim. I don't agree with the player map. I think the players need to get off their lazy heinies and make their own damn map.
That's a lost art. I mean, that's gone. It's 2019, dude. The GMs do all the work now.
Dude, I made a player map for the Purple Planet game. I used the Hex kit to do it, but I still made one.
Yeah.
And it looked pretty good, didn't it?
It looked pretty awesome.
Yeah, all right. The other thing that I think you need, and I would be surprised if there's argument here, but you need tables set up with random encounters of some kind. And those should be pretty varied. It should be like not just enemies, but, you know, maybe some places, some creatures, some natural geographical phenomenon. And they don't need to be huge. If you're comfortable winging it at the table, You could have a very simple thing that indicates like, all right, you've found a creature, or you have found an enemy, or you have found a friendly NPC, or you have found a geographical feature of note, or maybe a man-made feature of note. That's 5 things. So you could have a 1d5 table, and if you're willing to riff off of those at the table, then that's all you need. I'm not that good at riffing, so I did like one table with, I think, 12 entries that I kind of, developed on that and linked it up to like a 2d6 roll, or maybe it was the 3d4 roll, I don't remember. That I think is something that'll really help, because it'll give you something to go with. And then once you've got something and the players have got that, they're chasing after a creature that they encountered 3 hexes ago and keeps running from them, or they're tracking an enemy back to their base. Like, you can use that to generate your adventure content. So that's my thinking there.
So I've run them and played them. You've run them and played them. Reid, you've written them. Mm-hmm. What, from your perspective, are great tools for a good hex crawl?
Well, as much as I love HexKit, because I believe I kickstarted the first version of that.
Nice.
It is not a professional level tool because it requires, if there's even licensing available, it is not one of those, type of programs that would work well for that.
That is correct.
So, in the most general sense, to apply to as many hex crawls as possible, you need, first of all, a lot of tables to generate random hex content, including terrain features, local inhabitants, and possible hazards. It really works better, in a less general sense, for you to have some sort of terrain stuff planned out and possibly put on the map in the first place, and then have a bit more terrain-specific tables. So that way you don't have mountain creatures showing up in swamps. The other, well, I mean, it's,
maybe they're on vacation.
Who knows?
It's their day off.
That's right. The other thing in the most general sense of advice is you need a game master who is good at improvising a plot when one develops from random rolls. Because if you're playing a fully random hex crawl, meaning that you don't have any predefined materials and you're just riffing off of different table rolls you're doing live at the table, or what hex they left, so you've rolled up the 6 or 12 hexes around them, assuming they're not going to get much farther during the session, you need to be able to go with the flow of what the random rolls are coming up with, so that there's some logical progression or reason for everything to exist in the layout that it does. Otherwise, it feels like one of those dungeons where each monster in each room has no adjoining ecology of any sort, and sometimes don't even fit in the hallways it would require to get it into the room. And you want to avoid that as much as possible in a hex crawl. You want to, at first it may seem random, but you want to find some sort of a pattern in that randomness, and as a game master latch on to that, and that way it becomes an adventure versus a whole bunch of little one-shot 20-minute quips as they walk through hexes. So that would be the most basic tools I would suggest. I'm going to go ahead and play the number jumping game, and I'm going to jump to 3.
Yes. You open a door, and there's a great field in front of you, and the field has several answers on a show notes section.
That's right.
See, folks, we're getting meta here because the podcast itself is a hex crawl.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to the heading of what makes for a good hex crawl, because I believe that really is important.
Yes.
I don't really love completely random hex crawls, because I feel you either have to have an overarching plot thread of why you're going through the area that may be completely random, or you need to head into an area in which part of the map is filled with hexes that have defined elements, locations, and inhabitants that trigger certain plot points, while all the rest of the hexes are loaded with random items based on the terrain features in between them, so that if you're never sure at first, am I walking into a randomly generated hex, or is this hex actually part of the larger plot that I am finding out exists here, so that you can trip over established NPCs or factions or or locations that are fought over by the NPCs or the factions and all that kind of stuff, so that there is some sort of a reason for the hex crawl to exist. I think that really your players are going to love it more if you either have an overarching plot of why they're going through an area, or as they travel through the area, you have seeded some of the hexes with plot points, and really it's possible that they can literally walk around every single plot point and never hit it because they choose not to go in that direction, and be completely blindsided when all of the factions or NPCs have advanced well beyond anything the players are ready for when they finally run into them.
So, Reid, let me ask you a question, because I'm going to draw from question 1, which is not in order again, because hex crawl. Could you refer to a really good hex crawl or something you've done or you've played through, whether it's something that's not DCC, something that you think felt like had captured the good hex crawl vibe upon first read? Your thoughts?
Well, I cannot bring to memory too many hex crawls I participated in, because those were very much the beginning of my gaming career, and hex crawls fell out of style as being too railroady in a way for quite some time.
I don't remember them in 2nd and 3rd edition D&D. I don't remember them being out there.
Right. 2nd and 3rd edition did not do the hex crawls because that was old school and nobody wanted to put on their white beards and be grumpy.
And that was considered railroady?
Just go with what happened with the 2nd edition and 3rd edition revolutions there for a second.
Wow. Okay.
No, 2nd and 3rd were railroady. What Reid's saying, if I correct me if I'm wrong, Reid, you're saying that in 2nd and 3rd edition, it kind of had more of a railroady vibe, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I had it backwards.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe I misspoke, but that was what I was intending.
No, I gotcha.
And honestly, it was a lot of the OSR stuff that brought the joys of hex crawling back. And until that movement really became popular enough that people even understood what OSR might actually stand for, that there were really many hex crawls, not in the public eye, but it's kind of a forgotten art that has been restored. So as far as something I've written, I certainly wouldn't say it's the best hex crawl by any means, but people seem to enjoy it. In issues 14 and 15 of the Crawling Under a Broken Moon fanzine series I wrote is the Dinotastic Park, in which it is a big, giant, glowing dome surrounded by a heavy-duty wall that encompasses a good portion of what would be left of the state of Montana.
Welcome to Dinotastic Park.
Exactly. Yes, and any sort of relations to Jurassic Park are completely in your mind. But the idea being that it was a semi-random hex crawl in which there was 2 major NPC factions and I think 2 minor NPC factions that did exist and had places on the map and were fighting for territory and for goods in certain areas. But the rest of it was all done up in off of random tables that covered various types. It started off with, well, let's start out with the basic things. Is this an occupied hex? Is it an unoccupied hex? Or is it a wild hex? Or is it a hex that had some sort of a complex on it? Was that complex a scientific complex? Was it an attraction complex? Was it a hotel complex where guests would stay back when this was actually a functioning park? And it would just kind of walk you through various dice rolls to determine whether you were running into an abandoned amusement center intended for park guests, or was this one of the genetic labs that was trying to figure out how to weaponize dinosaurs? Like you do. Or was it just a completely, intended to be pretty Jurassic-y, foresty type hex that happens to now be occupied by random occupants, because before it wasn't occupied by anybody? So that there's, definitely an environment going on. There's a social ecology, there's a physical ecology going on that has some sense of order to it and purpose that the players can encounter, but they also can equally encounter completely random areas that are simply there to both keep the players occupied and keep the game master on their toes. And now I'm going to completely start answering one of your questions about vehicles. How would you handle vehicles that greatly increase the range? It has not been published yet, but I also have created a hex crawl called the Gluminoids of the Great Whistling Marshes, which is a mostly random hex crawl adventure that assumes that the players, for the most part, are going to be using vehicles. This is a section of the map, or a section of the Umerica world map, in which it is a trek from the outer reaches of what would be considered the suburbs of Chicago to try and make it into Chicago for some very specific equipment that only exists in very large cities. And the Whistling Marshes are what is left of the greater Chicago suburban area, because most of the area around Chicago is actually some, related to or connected to some form of marsh, which a lot of people don't realize. I'm not going to say that it's all marshes, but enough of it is marshes that given a large amount of radiation or explosions and all that, and a lot of it's going to get wet and sink.
I'm going to paraphrase the Brady Bunch and say marshes, marshes, marshes.
That's it. Marshes, marshes, marshes. So they start at the edge at what would be a boom town in gold rush terms for people who would go into the marshes and most likely never come back, and where you can buy a lot of equipment that was only dropped once, meaning that the previous owners died. And they're hired by a rail merchant who gives them an offering of one of 3 different types of vehicles to try and go through. And I actually hand out a map with hexes on it, with numbered hexes, that shows the positions of, here is Tent Town, this place where you're starting at, and here is where the city is. And some hexes have gray lines through them, which is, a possibility that one of the great highways still exists. Or you could go off-road just by, going into the parts of the hexes that don't have the roads. Or you could even use some fan boats to try and use the marsh to their advantage by crossing the wetlands with, powered fan boats. So I assume they're always traveling by vehicle. So I state you can go 1 hex really safely and get bonuses to your perception rolls and to your searching rolls. You can travel 2 hexes without any bonuses or penalties. You can travel 3 hexes with a minor penalty to any sort of vehicle control rolls or perception checks or chances to spot something from your moving vehicles that you might want to stop and check out. And then you could go 4 hexes per day. And at that speed, it's pretty unsafe, and the chances of you spotting something from a distance are going to be kind of slim. And that is really how I kind of handle it, is I don't use the vehicle's listed speeds. I tell them they can move between 1 and 4 hexes a day, and the safety of doing all of those speeds and the bonuses and penalties of doing all those speeds, and let them choose. Is it abstract? Yes. So far, I have never had any group complain at all, and have really enjoyed trying to figure out, should we go fast? Should we go slow? And seeing the rewards and the penalties of using caution or giving into folly.
I like that resource management aspect of that, though. It's like you can go slow and drag your feet across the map, but you're going to drain your water, your food more quickly. So, you might see more and have more options, but if you are running low on supplies, when I ran Purple Planet, I liked to keep supplies as a concern, especially early on before they found a skiff, before they found a craft to travel around. Was okay, look, we can drag our feet and really look for things, but on the flip side, we're going to be starving by, the day after tomorrow.
Yeah, and even after we had found that vehicle, we didn't have protection from the sun. We didn't have a whole lot of food and water. Like, we were touch and go for the in-game equivalent of about a week, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And I know, Mark, you've played in the Gluminoids.
I have played.
How did you feel about the pacing and speed issues of doing a vehicle-based hex crawl?
I thought that aspect worked out really well, because I want to say that in order to get to where the good stuff was on the map, or at least where we believed there to be good stuff on the map, we had to definitely make some compromises in terms of travel speed, in terms of whether or not we wanted to go and try to follow what we thought was a road versus not. There was a lot of discussion at the table and in a good way, as far as like, what do we do next? You know, and then I think at one point we randomly stumbled on, I want to say it was like a university campus, which I'm going to guess was not random.
Nope, that was random.
That was random. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. See, I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And that's the best part, right? When you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, to give a basic breakdown, is there's about a 50-50 chance that there was something in a hex worth even possibly seeing. And then I had them roll on percentile to determine what it might be. And in that case, they've moved into an area that had municipal buildings that still were working. I'm sorry, educational buildings that are still working. So I had them roll on a smaller chart to determine what kind of an educational building, and it turned out to be a full university campus. And from there, I just described a random university campus. They all decided to stop, and then, you know, chaos ensued as I slowly but surely wasted their time, you know, tempting them with weird crap so that they would burn their resources in hopes of finding something on the university campus.
I think we also found some cyber zombies.
Oh, yes, you did. Yeah, because I also had a random inhabitants chart, and I had them roll, and so they ran into some robo-monks of the cyber hive.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yep.
Yeah, I really liked that. I mean, I think from the vehicle standpoint, too, we had, I think you gave us 3 choices of vehicles. So
Yep.
It was like, we had a van, we had I want to say it was a fan boat, and then it was like a heavy, like a flatbed truck.
If one of the characters was a petrol head, he had his own van and was able to use that. The merchant offered a flatbed truck, or 2 ice cream trucks, or 2 fan boats, and if you rolled high enough on a personality check, you could kind of mix and match some of those.
Yeah. We were worried because, like, the fan boats would be terrible outside of the swamp. And the flatbed would be terrible anywhere that wasn't firm ground. And so ultimately we went with the ice cream trucks, hoping that they could sort of, you know, kind of be a little bit more all-terrain, with the understanding that they probably wouldn't. So there was that as well, like the fact that it wasn't just like how quickly do you want to move, but there was the meaningful choices around like what we had for gear, you know, or in this case for vehicles. And in a campaign where the players are going to be a little bit more, you know, there's going to be more backstory, more investment there, you know, that could potentially make for some interesting long-term play. Like you said, if there was a petrol head who had his own vehicle, then that provides an additional sort of option.
Right. And the other thing I did as to get people into the world was, as I pulled out the map and described the speeds they could go at, I also said, hey, you've also found, you know, you've heard rumors of a place that could be in one of these 3 places. And it was an abandoned military facility that, of course, everybody wants to go to get some abandoned military tech. And I had everyone roll dice and add up those dice. And that was the number of the hex where they heard the rumor was at. So this happened 3 times. So there was a big 1, 2, and 3 written on the map. Is different every time, and it was a temptation for them to go check it out. Yep. Of course, only one of those 3 places is the military base. The other 2 are different things. Yeah. One of which might be horrible.
Might be based on a random roll, or might be as in...
Oh, no. These are 3 specific encounters.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. No, overall, I mean, I think to sort of loop back around to the question, which was around the vehicle side of things, I think the varying speeds having varying impact on the game, that is an important thing to consider, and I think that's a good way to deal with vehicles. Another thing you can do if it's the, you know, like MCC, there's like flying cars and whatnot. When you're talking about a flying car that can do 500 miles an hour, like, it stops being a hex crawl on a certain scale and it becomes a hex crawl on a much different scale.
Yeah.
Correct.
Agreed.
So at that point, what you got to do is kind of say, well, all right, the entirety of the map that we have looked at so far takes place in this tiny little hex in this corner of this much larger map. And you basically just got to say, I'm going to scale up the size of each of these hexes by whatever factor. You know, maybe they went from being 1 mile hexes to being 10 mile hexes, or 100 mile hexes if it's a vehicle that can move that quickly. And you basically throw that in the players', you know, faces and say, if you want to do this in this vehicle, that you're crossing significantly larger tracts of land, and your interaction with the environment is going to be changing drastically, especially if it's a flying car, because you're not flying at ground level probably. And so everything you see is going to be different.
Yeah, the faster you go, the less you're going to be able to interact with any minutia that may have been there.
Absolutely. And that means it's going to be harder to explore and find stuff, which is probably what the players want to do. So sometimes finding a fast flying vehicle is the exact opposite of what the players actually want once they get down to thinking about it. It's going to sound really cool when they find it, and then they're going to realize how terrible it is.
Yep.
Their characters might want it, but they don't want it.
Yes, exactly.
I think we covered it.
I think we actually explored this entire map.
I think we did. I do want to send one more thank you to Ken for tossing that question. A great question, you know.
It was absolutely a fantastic question.
Yeah. Yep.
An entire episode based on one email. So, folks, remember, glowburnpodcast@gmail.com.
We can't be XXX strong without you.
Exactly.
Mutagenesis.
All right, time for some mutagenesis action. And this is when we take things from media or other game systems and try to convert them for MCC or DCC RPG use. And Reid, what have you cooked up and concocted for tonight?
Well, I've got quite a delicious dish that may not be directly taken from any one source, but it definitely fits with the general idea of an alien device used to dispense food. It's called the Alien Nourishment Device. It appears to be a simple 6-inch cube with slightly rounded corners. It has an asymmetrical, unlabeled touchpad on one side, and on the opposite side, an extrusion port with an obvious button. Activating the device is quite simple. Just point the extrusion port in a downward position and press the button next to it. Then it'll produce 1d3 plus 1 meals worth of foamy nutrient porridge. The things that all alien children go running for.
Yummy.
Of course, the touchpad controls all of the settings, including flavor selection and the base source for the cube to draw raw materials for its food production, which originally consists of nutrient vats located aboard a spacecraft. But if the settings are not tuned correctly, it will produce flavors at random, including unpalatable extraterrestrial flavors, and has a 66% chance of drawing the raw materials necessary to form the porridge from a random organic source within 100 feet. If it just happens to be a organic source that might have statistics, it will cause 1 point of stamina damage per serving generated.
Nice.
The and will function up to 6 times within any 24-hour period. If overuse is attempted, the cube will become unresponsive until the proper amount of time has passed.
Nice.
So it'll pout.
Yes.
Nice. So the AI-enabled version will have a little, like, emoji-type face on one side of the cube?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That'll be a third side of the cube that's active.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. I especially like the fact that they could end up eating themselves if they're not careful.
Right. I mean, now if somebody makes a proper artifact check to try and figure out how it works, then they can choose to target anything within either 100 feet, or if it's something that actually broadcasts its location, such as an alien, nutrient vat, it could be possibly miles away. And they can just lock onto that and make all the food that they need within the 6 times per 24-hour period.
Sure.
Of course, if someone rolls really well and really knows how the device works, they in theory could lock onto any organic source within 100 feet and make food. In combat.
Nice. Nice. That's pretty cool. I like that. Jim, what do you got?
All right, mine's kind of lame. I'm sorry. But I wanted to take a step back to one of the coolest beverages from my childhood. And I came up with stats for Crystal Pepsi. So imagine, if you will, like 200-300 years have passed, and someone finds a case of Crystal Pepsi in the far future of the Terra AD. And this special beverage has received high doses of radiation over the years from the Great Disaster itself. And here are the stats. Upon drinking at least 12 ounces of Crystal Pepsi, the user can Crystal Pepsi burn their stat pools. And for an hour, each point of Crystal Pepsi burn to strength, stamina, or agility allows a plus 1d3 bonus to any stealth-related tasks as the user becomes more invisible, hence the Crystal Pepsi effect. So the idea is that Crystal Pepsi turns not only the cola flavoring crystallized, it turns you crystallized. All right, so you can like Crystal Pepsi yourself to your heart's content, spend 4 points of stamina and roll 43, take it off your roll for trying to hide. So, pass a 6-pack around, all your player characters drink one, you hide. That's really it.
So if somebody were to burn their agility all the way down, though, does that mean they've fully crystallized and they are like an immobile statue?
I didn't get that far.
Okay.
That's fair. Fair question.
I think Crystal Pepsi abuse should be addressed in the fact that there might be some sort of a cumulative percentage chance for every Crystal Pepsi drank within, say, a 24-hour period of them actually just becoming an invisible crystalline structure.
Maybe if you have ounces tied directly to a percentile roll, like total ounces consumed.
So that means that if I just drank one 12-ounce, I have a 12% chance of turning into an invisible crystalline structure?
Yes.
Yes.
Permanently?
Yes.
I like it.
Sounds great to me.
Sold.
Yeah.
Sold.
I like it.
Mark.
Okay. I'm apparently going to go and try to go 3 for 3 on stupid puns. So, giant mutant insects are kind of already a thing in MCC book. Like, just go into the bestiary section and look at the devils. Like, those are basically just all giant mutant insects. What about non-giant mutant insects? And I do mean, like, things other than mosquitoes, which are obviously a mosquito-mouse hybrid, because I don't want to know how that happened, but that's a thing.
Vegas. What happens in Vegas?
Probably the same way that rat-tatoes happened.
I don't want to know. I definitely don't want to know.
Alcohol. That's how it happens.
Yeah, alcohol and Vegas. That makes sense. The post-apocalyptic Vegas is going to be a frightening place. And then I thought to myself, well, what happens when, like, a fly, just like a house fly or a horse fly or something, gets, like, radiated with temporal energy and gains the ability to bite somebody and send them forward in time? Well, you get time flies. Yeah, like I said,
so bad.
Terrible puns. So time flies are AC 20 because, it's a fly and it's temporally active, so it's going to be really hard to hit. But they only have 1 hit point. They're not super dangerous. They attack at +5, dealing a single point of damage, but they can send the target a minute into the future. Or a minute into the past, or, more or less. I guess that depends on you. Maybe the time fly settles on you and really gets a good drink off you and sends you like a day into the future.
Weeping angels. Weeping angels.
Yeah, exactly.
Or what happens if there's a whole swarm of time flies? What happens?
Well, there's sort of the hidden gem, right? One time fly doesn't seem very dangerous, but like you said, if you've got a whole cloud of time flies, if the PCs come upon the dead body of a chrono bear and the time flies have been feeding off the body of the chrono bear, that could be really dangerous. So, sometimes your enemies or your antagonists, they don't need to be great big scary monsters. They can just be little annoying insects that, send the players into different times.
I like it.
Wouldn't it also be true that they would most likely be encountered during a time in which you are engaging in a happy activity?
Would you mean by like a barbecue or a picnic?
Well, something like that, except, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, man.
Oh, how did I not see that coming? Oh, God.
Well, there's no coming back from that.
Nope. I think we need to move on.
Let's go. All right, to wrap things up, let's talk about conventions a bit right now. So in our announcement section, so really it's Gen Con. Gen Con's on the horizon here. I know that I will be running 2 sessions of X-Crawl Dungeon Battle Delco, my tribute to the Delaware County and Philadelphia area of Pennsylvania. And Judge Evie's running some Mall. Woo! Mark, what do you got cooking at Gen Con?
I've got 2 sessions of Assault on the Sky High Tower, one of which is going to be a 0-level funnel, one of which is going to be a 1st level, and then 2 sessions of Warlords of Ataz. And if anybody manages to get into both Assault and Warlords and wants to bring their Assault Survivor character to Ataz, I will level you up at the beginning of the session if you so desire.
Ooh.
Yeah, I figured that might be fun to let people actually, level their character up. Other than that, that's what I've got at Gen Con at the moment.
Reid, any convention stuff you want to talk about?
Well, I'm not going to be attending Gen Con myself, but I do know that there's going to be several people representing the Scions of the Apocalypse. Unfortunately, at this point, I did not have a chance to gather the exact names and times of those events.
I'm sure they're coming soon.
But there will be Umerica there.
Umerica will show up.
Oh, yes, it will.
Umerica the Beautiful.
Umerica prevails.
Mm-hmm.
Contacting us. So I mentioned before our email, glowburnpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter @Glowburn. We have the Glow blog, glowburn.blogspot.com. And individually, Reid, how can we find you?
Well, I can be contacted on Facebook via the Shield of Faith Studios page, or you can email me directly at crawlingunderaBrokenMoon@gmail.com.
And Jim?
I'm, as always, at I Live for Crits, and you can now catch me and Judge Evie every Sunday night on the Living for Crits channel over on YouTube. We tried talking about D&D 5th edition. That lasted all of 2 episodes, and it was nope, back to DCC. Our last episode was all Gen Con related, so if you come catch up with us, we would love to have a live chat with you on a Sunday at 8 o'clock at night.
And you can find me on Twitter @InspStrikes, INSP Strikes, or my blog, which is getting less and less updated, at inspstrikes.blogspot.com.
So for special thanks and credits here, the shaman of intros, outros, and bumpers was Bob the Voice Brinkman. Our patron AI of audio visual engineering is Hector the Missile Cruz. Our creative advisors, our lost Google Plus community, eternally XXX strong. Our intro outro song is Juno off of Voyager by Chronox. And I just want to thank Reid for joining us tonight. Sorry again that the lost true 24th episode that was supposed to precede his American Unnatural Kickstarter, we did not get that off the ground. We had some tech issues, but we love having you back and hope to have you back again.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
So do you want to kick us off with your outro here, sir?
Famous last words?
Sure. May all of your deaths be glorious and quick.
Jim?
Oh, crap. Well, all I gotta say is if you're ever on the Purple Planet, make sure to eat just a few mushrooms. Not at once.
And I'm going to say, remember, folks, your apocalypse isn't complete until an alien eats a moon.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Ariel, Ukla, ride!
Blood of your enemy makes you stronger.
This has been a Hectophonic production.
The gun is good, the gun is good, the gun is good, the gun is good, the gun is good.
I mean, all you're doing is putting in a sanitized ocean into your sinuses.